Well, FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried has pled not guilty to charges of fraud. If convicted, the disgraced whiz kid could go to jail for up to 115 years. His trial is expected to start on October 2nd of this year.
Yesterday in court, Bankman-Fried's attorney, who also represented Ghislaine Maxwell, successfully argued to keep secret the identity of two signatories who backed the former CEO's $250 million bail, which he was released on just before Christmas. The photo went around the internet of him sitting in first class, cruising home for the holidays in the midst of all of the airport kerfuffle that everybody else is dealing with.
That should have been a requirement for the bail. He's not allowed to fly first class.
Right? I mean, the injustice of it, this is what people have been saying about bail reform for years, that whether or not you get out is not calibrated to the crime that you actually did, or the safety risk, or even flight risk oftentimes, but simply whether or not you have money.
But it's supposed to be flight risk. Now, I would have thought, I guess I could be wrong, I would have thought he is something of a flight risk, perhaps.
Yeah.
He's someone with resources, and he was living in the Bahamas.
Yeah, well, I believe he does have an ankle monitor, doesn't he? I mean, which I think is an intervention that could be used in a lot of these kinds of cases. But a lot of people simply can't afford it.
Yeah, and attaching an ankle, again, I could be wrong here, I suppose, but I would think attaching an ankle monitor is cheaper than the cost of housing and feeding prisoners for weeks and months and sometimes years, and they wait in Rikers for trial.
Yeah, so especially if they have to get special digs the way Sam Bankman-Fried apparently had when he was in the Bahamas and not with the general population. So here's the thing. He's pled not guilty. What do you make of that? You think this is just, what you do to mount a good defense, make the government prove its case? It does seem a little bit interesting given that his girlfriend seems to have flipped on him immediately without any coercion, and she knows all. What do you think is going to happen here?
Well, I believe they could still reach some kind of deal, even, you can reach a deal all the way up until the point of the verdict being read, right? So this doesn't mean that he won't eventually change that plea or work something out. It could mean, maybe he's going for the kind of high risk, high reward strategy. You plead not guilty. You actually go to court. The governments could screw up. Key witnesses could change their mind or contradict themselves. There could be a procedural issue where he gets out. That could happen.
It could
on the strength of the case, I think he's likely to be found guilty. But something funny could happen.
His girlfriend isn't just a girlfriend. She was CEO of Alameda. So she was CEO of the hedge fund that's at the root of all of this fraud.
No, to be clear, I think the case against him is going to be staggeringly, exhaustively sufficient to convict him. But strange things can happen.
Yeah, we should mention that his co-founder at FTX, Gary Wang, was also arrested, and he also pleaded guilty along with SBF's girlfriend. So again, there's no shortage of informants here who are kind of at the core of the alleged fraud.
Well, we should mention that so far, in all his discussions with the media and his willingness to talk about the case, he has suggested, and I don't know what his psychological profile is, I can just speculate based on what I hear him say, based on watching him give interviews that he should not be giving, that are contrary to what all legal advice would be. So it could be that he's truly convinced himself that he's innocent or that he'll be found innocent, and so he is proceeding along this path with that assumption in mind, perhaps ignoring or not listening to advice from attorneys saying, no, you will be found guilty, you should make some kind of deal. Could be in his head, that doesn't compute for him. Yeah,
I am curious about the role his parents, who are both attorneys, not criminal defense attorneys. I believe his dad is a tax attorney or a law professor at Stanford. What the role that they've been playing in advising him.
They don't want him to make a deal. They want him to plead guilty and go to jail so that it doesn't reflect on them, right?
No, I wonder if sometimes when you're too close to it, it's the whole thing about doctors shouldn't operate on their patients, that maybe he's been getting some bad legal advice from them throughout this, but now he's retained real counsel. It is Ghislaine Maxwell's counsel, which is an interesting quirk of all of this.
There's only so many characters in this narrative drama of our lives. You have to reuse the same characters.
Apparently. On some level, I guess it speaks to the resources that the Bankman-Frieds have to get such a high-profile and famous attorney. But all of that aside, it does feel like from the interviews that he's been given, perhaps unwisely and perhaps at the advice of his overly confident lawyer parents.
Perhaps.
That he's mounting this kind of gosh, gee willikers, I really didn't know. I'm an innocent babe in the woods defense. And it's frustrating to watch because even if it were true, if I were to walk through a public sphere swinging a mace around my head, killing people left and right, and just, I didn't know that was the effect of blunt force trauma, that I would hurt people by doing this incredibly dangerous activity, nobody would buy it for an instant. I do think that sometimes with financial crimes, because the lay public is so ignorant and judges are so generally ignorant of what goes on in these institutions. Everyone's ignorant of what goes on at high level of finance.
1d8 damage in
What's that?
Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, about to say, like, you're questioning my mace analogy when you're the king of Dungeons and Dragons. I teed that one up for you, Robby.
Sam Bankman-Fried should just get up on the stand and be like, crypto, what even is that? How does it work? I don't know. None of you know. I dare anyone to explain it. You must acquit unless you can explain it.
Unfortunately, in my limited experience as a corporate attorney, oftentimes I do think that people get away with not quite murder, but the financial equivalent because of broad ignorance. Ignorance of the people who are reviewing documents and not actually knowing how frauds are executed. Ignorance in the court system of not really understanding, what really is good business judgment, because I'm not in the business. That seems like plausible to me. Therefore, I'm going to allow that kind of behavior, even though insiders know it was reckless. And absent a smoking gun email that says, I knew that making this business decision was bad and I decided to do it anyway, which most people outside of SBF at least are smart enough not to commit that kind of thing, to print or say that kind of thing out loud in interviews. Well, they get away with murder. So we'll see what happens.
We shall see. Love the battle mace. Love the battle mace analogy.
I thought you might.
More Rising in just a minute. Stay with us.